Judith, the waitress, became worried when a family with 2 kids ordered just one kid's meal at the restaurant. She decided to watch them closely and saw that the little girl wasn't eating and her family wasn't paying attention to her. Judith held up a sign that asked, "Do you need help?" She received a clear answer that the little girl needed assistance right away. Now that she could communicate with the little girl, Judith was prepared to take action. So when the family stood up and grabbed the little girl by the hand, Judith was more than ready to get in their way with some tough questions. As they exited the restaurant, Judith and a few other diners stopped the family from leaving and confronted them with what they had discovered. The father turned red as a cherry, then looked at his daughter. "That's not what it looks like," he said. The father started frantically explaining why he hadn't bought a meal for his daughter. When he was done, Judith could hardly believe it. But what reason had the father given? Something wrong with the little girl, or was something else going on? It was the Saturday dinner rush, so the restaurant was packed with guests. Judith made sure the family was seated at their table and then rushed over to take orders from the other diners who had already been seated with drinks. Judith passed the family several times on her way before returning to take their food order. When the family finished ordering, Judith realized that they had only ordered 3 meals. Since there were 2 parents and 2 children, it didn't match. There was no second meal on the children's menu or even a side dish to accompany the starters. Judith's brain started working in overdrive. What was happening? There was nothing extraordinary about the children. They seemed well-behaved and polite. But after years of seeing different families, Judith had seen parents deny children food as punishment. However, there was a big difference between not buying restaurant food for a misbehaving child and not giving them food at all. She decided to figure out what was going on. Judith tested different angles and figured out the best ways to keep an eye on the family without them noticing. She could stand in the waitress area in the back or hover at the side of the bar. Both places seemed natural. After a few minutes of observing the family, Judith was able to draw some conclusions. Everyone at the table was lively and talking, except the little girl. The parents and their son were talking to each other, but the girl sat quietly. She didn't even react when the others laughed or told a story. At one point, the little girl acted like she was going to get up from the table. Maybe she needed to go to the bathroom, or if she was in danger, the girl might have tried to get help. But as soon as she moved, her father clamped her hand and wouldn't allow her to move. Judith nearly intervened, but then noticed that the family's food was over. She collected the family's food and brought it to the table. She set the main dishes in front of the parents, then held up the children's meal. Judith was sure the family hadn't noticed her watching them, so she pretended to be confused about the missing meal. She asked which child had ordered the meal and moved closer to the little girl to give her a chance to reach out if she wanted to. When the parents responded, Judith was not at all surprised. Without thinking, the father replied that the meal was for his son. The whole family seemed to freeze when they heard Judith's question. The young girl was particularly interested in what Judith was asking and fixed her with a look that the waitress didn't quite understand. The girl's father responded somewhat nervously that his daughter was not hungry. Judith didn't know what to believe. Judith immediately noticed that the parents acted differently toward her. Time was running out for Judith to understand what was happening with the little girl. Judith continued to study the family between the plates, running to other tables. Parents and some were all eating. But the little girl didn't touch anything. None of them offered to share or give her a bite of their meal. The girl looked so sad that it broke Judith's heart. Someone had to do something. She really needed to talk to the girl alone before the family left the restaurant. Judith had a feeling something was wrong. She then grabbed a pen and paper and wrote a message. It said, "Do you need help?" The girl looked in Judith's direction and nodded without her father noticing. Judith wrote okay to let the girl know she would help. Now Judith had to come up with a plan to get to the girl alone. The easiest thing would be for Judith to talk to her in the bathroom. It was the only place she could talk to the kid without anyone interfering. Judith had an idea, but it required the help of some of her colleagues. She informed her closest colleagues that something was going on with the family. One of them even agreed that she also noticed it. Judith hatched a plan to let her colleague accidentally spill soda on the father and daughter. It had to keep them away from the table. They prepared the order immediately to make sure the plan would work. Then it started. Drinks were carefully spilled. The father got angry. He shouted that he would call the police if she did not come out. Judith knew she would be in trouble if she kept Anna here. She opened the door reluctantly, looked straight into the father's eyes. He looked angry. He grabbed his daughter's hand and walked back to their table. Judith mustered up the courage to face the father. She had no idea of his reaction. Then Judith approached the table. The father asked her if she had come to apologize. Judith told him she had different plans, and then he laughed. He wasn't afraid of a little waitress. He told her to be careful with her next steps. Judith told him to stop and let her talk. Judith told him to tell the truth about the situation with his daughter. She spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. There was a big smile on his face. He told Judith not to worry anymore. Everything would be fine. Then stranger things started to happen. The mother started to applaud, as well as the rest of the restaurant. Judith was totally in shock. What was going on here? Then her boss stood up, and Judith thanked her for doing the right thing. Judith demanded an explanation. Then, out of nowhere, a film crew arrived. Judith was absolutely amazed. She didn't know how to react. Then Anna approached Judith to give her a hug. Judith could only look at everyone around her. Then Anna said, "You are a good person, Judith." Judith demanded an explanation. Judith's boss and her best friend had secretly arranged for a hidden camera show to highlight what a wonderful person Judith was. Everyone who was there today was part of this surprise event. Judith was completely taken aback and didn't know how to react. It all felt incredibly unreal. Emotions overwhelmed Judith, and she expressed her gratitude to everyone. The suddenness of it all caught her off guard, especially after a challenging year she had endured. She didn't really mind being on TV. What mattered to her was the kind gesture from everyone around her. The film crew appreciated her for taking it in good spirits. Judith didn't seem upset about being fooled. It showed her kindness. Later on, Judith watched the episode at home with Anna and the family, and they all had a good laugh about it.